Hi, just going live on both of my devices again today. Just excited to really get into the first principle of intuitive eating, which is reject the diet mentality. Now, there are 10 different principles to intuitive eating. There's really not a specific order that they need to be done in, but I really feel like this first one really should be done first because of how prevalent it is in everything else. So it's really a foundational principle in a lot of ways. So I really feel like it is one of the most important, if not the most important idea, because it really is challenging in a lot of ways. And it really it keeps coming up. So I think there's a lot of layers to rejecting diets and the diet mentality. So I'm just talking about, just really just a summary of what that is today. And so when I work with clients on this, it's something that keeps coming up. It keeps coming to the surface, and it's not a one and done kind of thing. So it's definitely visited frequently throughout the process of becoming an intuitive eater. So, and really just embracing the whole person health concept that your weight does not determine your health. So I think a lot of times when I first introduce this or people hear this, they might think, yep, okay, I've got it. I can move on to the next principle. But I promise it's not as simple as it sounds. So I want to first lay down what the foundation of this particular principle is, and then move into recognizing it in your life and your eating history, and then really take steps to how can you apply this in your life. So before we can talk about what the diet mentality is, we have to address what diet culture is. We have to understand these concepts before we can reject them. So first thing, culture on its own, so without the diet part, it's defined as ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. So if then you add in the word diet to it, diet culture then is defined as a system of beliefs, customs, messages, and behaviors that places value and focus on weight, shape, and size over and above health and well-being. And it has been kind of hammered into us that our weight and size really is the ultimate measure of our worth as a human being. I hear this a lot, especially in my Facebook group. That is what people are struggling with, is specific areas of their body, specific just their weight, feeling like their value really is determined by their size, how it has changed over the years. So diet culture really has conditioned us to believe that weight and size are a direct indicator of our health, and sometimes the only indicator of our health, and that reaching good health is only determined, it's only reached by a good weight, and that's not the case. And that's where you see a lot of people fighting with the health at every size movement, that people can be healthy in different sizes, and that's an argument for another video. My intense dislike for the BMI. So essentially, just to finish up the whole concept of diet culture, it's the idea that our status of a worthy, healthy human being, diet culture really has given us a very narrow idea of what is considered correct way to eat. There's a lot of good food, bad food, clean food, dirty food, and that by eating those foods, we then take on that value ourselves. Oh, I've done really well today. I've been really good today because I've eaten my good foods or my clean foods. So sadly, what this has done is it's made it really difficult to see diet culture. We just exist in it. The messages, the beliefs, the dialogue, all these values, they've become normal, which is really frightening. And they've become facts. They've become our truth. You'll see research articles that say that, weight determines everything. And so it's become very difficult for us as humans to then take that apart and say, okay, what's real and what is really damaging? It's very sad because it's normal for people to comment on weight loss. It's normal for people to be constantly pursuing weight loss. It's normal for a new mom to have getting her body back as the number one thing to do after giving birth. And it's also normal for any medical injury or problem to be explained away by weight, and therefore the focus is you need to just lose weight, and that's your prescription, that's your cure, when oftentimes that's not the case. So, and it also has become normal to be constantly dissatisfied and even hate our bodies. I see that a lot with my clients and with those that I interact with. We fixate. It's normal to fixate on our bodies that, okay, my losing weight is going to solve, I put that in air quotes, solve what is wrong with my body, rather than respect and care for your body how it is right now and love your body and accept it. So it's the idea of your motivation comes from an intense dislike for your body instead of being motivated by a love and acceptance of your body. So all of these aspects of diet culture mean that, we're at a point in our human existence that we spend an enormous amount of money and time and energy on the pursuit of shrinking our bodies, or at least keeping them from getting bigger. And if for some reason we can't achieve that thin ideal, we're left thinking that there is something wrong with us, that we're weak, we're broken, we're unworthy. And so we try just a little bit harder the next time. And then the cycle continues. And that first idea or that desire of wanting to be thinner, we start to restrict, and then we end up craving, and then we end up binging, and that cycle continues. So the cycle of the dieter. And this is where the diet mentality comes in. So you have diet culture, and then the diet mentality is how do you personally internalize that culture in your life. So this is going to look different for every person. For myself, this looked like tracking for several years, whether just with MyFitnessPal, I'm just trying to be aware of what I'm eating, when it then, took steps into tracking my macros and weighing my food and trying to Tetris fit everything that I wanted to eat in my day, or exercising to change specifically how I looked, or how much I weighed, regardless of the injury, regardless of how exhausted I was, just really out of balance. This also looks like, very similar to diet culture, the idea of good or bad foods, and again, internalizing that good or bad if you ate a certain food. And then believing that overeating or emotional eating was something that I needed to fix, and it's a character flaw. So some other ideas of diet mentality and how it might look for you might feel, feeling guilty after eating, like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that, I'm so bad. And then maybe even this one probably hurts a little bit, but telling everyone that you're making lifestyle changes to get healthy. But really what this looks like at the heart of hearts is you just want to see a lower number on the scale or a smaller size in your clothing. And then just the up and down that comes with that. So some other ideas, just if, to see if any of these resonate with you, feeling disappointed, like a failure or weak when the number on the scales don't budge, or if they start to go up because our bodies adjust to whatever it is that we're trying to do. And just a fixation on that number. I can't tell you how many people, when we went into quarantine, were so concerned about, okay, I've gained this weight, I've got to get it off. Or, what is this going to do as I eat normal foods? If you're eating normal, it's not going to be a problem when you're there with the food. That's the diet mentality that was overrunning people, and there was this fear of it. So another thing, and this was one that was a problem for me, was having the number on the scale dictate my mood for the day. I could, if I saw a good number or a number that went down on the scale, I was thrilled. Or if someone commented on how I looked, I was thrilled. So always looking for those external factors to tell me that I was doing good in my diet or in my life. And just the need to justify your eating, maybe healthifying recipes that you would like to eat, but you don't think you should because you consider them unhealthy. And this was another one, this is a big one, is just passing judgment or criticism on other people's bodies, about what they are or aren't eating. And then overall, if you think about all of these things and if it fills up your day, it's really just finding that too much of your day, too large of a proportion of your day is spent thinking about food, your size, how your body looks, your exercising, how can I control all of these things? And so that it just becomes completely out of balance. So I can tell you that for me, this list was hard to hear as I thought about how I needed to reject this mentality when I first started this work. And so as you think about the ways that you have internalized diet culture in your life, it can be hard, but I will tell you that once you start to notice it, you can't go back. You see it in so many places, and honestly, there might be some anger that comes out. So once you really start to let go of some of these things and change what you think, you'll start to see it and want to get angry at it, which honestly is part of the process. My husband, who actually watches these videos, he commented the other day that he is starting to see it and he really has changed his thoughts about it. I've been doing this long enough, hammering it in his head. You know, he recognizes it in other people and gives him pause. Now, when I am talking to people that are not talking to me as a coach and they're not asking me for my opinion, I don't sit there and try and correct them, because that's not my place, usually just as a friend. But if they're asking for my opinion specifically about this, I oftentimes will just try and plant seeds. And that's the best that sometimes you can do as you step into rejecting the diet mentality, is plant seeds in yourself. You know, question some of these ideas. What if I'm healthy at this weight, even if it's not what I think I should look like, or if I feel like I should weigh less, well, what if I'm healthy at this weight? So question some of these things that you've just been accepting for years, these culture ideals of what you should look like. So that's just an idea of something that you can do as you start on this process. So like I said, there's layers to rejecting diet mentality and rejecting the diet culture. And honestly, there's a process that can feel scary as you decide, I'm not going to diet anymore. Evelyn Tribole calls it the dieting void, where, okay, if you have looked to some kind of diet plan or just even ideas of what is good or bad to eat for so long, and suddenly that's taken away from you. If no one's telling you what to eat or how to eat or when to eat or how much to eat, what are you going to do? And so oftentimes people feel like, I'm going to lose control, right? No, there might be a period of feeling kind of crazy and like, oh, I can eat what I want. And there is an element to allowing yourself that permission to eat and having unconditional permission to eat. But that doesn't mean that you're eating yourself into a food coma every day and feeling physically ill. That's not intuitive eating, obviously. So I will say, though, it can feel very scary and a little bit out of control at first, because if you're used to an outside influence telling you how you're supposed to eat and not used to paying attention, you have to learn. You have to learn to listen, to question, am I hungry? What am I hungry for? How much am I hungry for? Is that my body telling me I'm full? And so there is a learning process, but it's kind of like learning how to swim. And I love this analogy that is given in the Intuitive Eating book. And Evelyn Tribole says, the feeling of being surrounded by water can be terrifying at first to the novice swimmer, especially when totally submerged. Similarly, being surrounded by food that you don't have any rules around can be terrifying to the chronic dieter who is learning how to eat again. And when I say chronic dieter, that could be anybody with any kind of rule or any kind of diet protocol or plan that they've been following. So it doesn't have to be someone who's been on Weight Watchers for their entire life. So I would encourage you to expand your idea of what being on a diet is. So, you know, it can be terrifying to the chronic dieter who's learning how to eat again. But you will not learn how to swim merely by standing at the edge of the pool, even while believing that learning how to swim is a good thing. So first, you need to get in. You need to start by getting your feet wet and learning how to breathe in the water. Eventually, you'll put your head in the water when you are ready and you get more comfortable, not out of control. So it is a process. There are steps to it. And so these are steps that are recommended as part of learning how to become an intuitive eater. And they again, there are layers to this, and it's not like one and done again. So the first step that is always recommended, and I tell people to do, is just reject the diet. Recognize, not reject. Recognize your history of dieting and actually accept that they didn't work. So for me personally, I had to look back at, okay, when was the first time I maybe restricted a certain type of food? Or maybe I had that first thought of, I am too big. So everybody will have their own history with diet culture and with the diet mentality, but it's always helpful to look back and see, okay, I did this for a while, but then when I stopped, the weight came back on. Or I noticed that I craved those foods. So it is imperative that you go through your history of dieting and recognize, what was I doing to get to the opposed, ideal size that I was at? How long did it actually last? And then what did that impact my self-esteem? How did I feel on that diet? How did I feel around food when I was restricting? Sorry, I got a plane going on outside. It's really loud. And then, other things. How did it impact my social life or my relationships? What did I feel like? How much money or or time was spent on this. So these are the kinds of things that you want to look at and recognize how futile those diets were. It's a really helpful process to go through to recognize they didn't work. Why do I think that this next one is going to be the magic thing, this shake, or this one particular exercise plan? This is going to be the one. When you have your history of 30 years of it not working. So when you reflect like that and you ask yourself, why do I keep doing this over and over again? Am I doing this because I love my body or because I hate my body? And am I more valuable if I take up less space? I'll tell you the answer to that is no. You're not more valuable if you take up less space. So the second step, once you've gone through that history, is becoming aware of any traits or thinking that go into diet mentality for you. And this can be hard. Some of these might be common words or phrases like willpower or obedience or a cheat day or a cheat meal or calories, macros, things that are clean, skinny, junk, just really any black and white thinking about food or exercise. All of these things are things that you can do for a while, but you can't do them for very long. And so, as I mentioned, there's what's called the dieter's dilemma, and I'll just recap it. It's that, the first part of the cycle is your desire to be thin, and then it moves to, okay, I'm going to diet, I'm going to do restriction of some kind, and then the cravings come. We're biologically trained to crave whatever it is that we're not allowing our bodies to have. And then once we have those cravings, we feel a lack of control, and then we lose control, and you end up overeating, and then you regain the lost weight, and then you have the desire to be thin again. And then what comes with that is you feel like you can't trust your body to make good choices. And so we want to get out of that shame spiral and remove that thinking so that we can get out of that cycle. So that is step 2. The third step is to replace the scale with self-compassion. So when I think about like some of the things that are key to stop doing, and that is to stop weighing yourself. I can't tell you how freeing it was to just let that go. Once you realize how many different factors go into your actual weight, which it's just your gravitational pull at that moment, and you realize, for me personally, how many emotions came with that, feeling good, feeling bad, for me, it just was very valuable to just stop doing it and to go off of other factors as to how I was feeling about myself that day. And so the best thing to do is, when you take that away, is just to give yourself compassion. And really look at what does progress really mean. And a lot of times, and most of the time, dieting, it's either measuring yourself or weighing yourself, and that's a measure of measure of progress. And what does progress really mean? So you have to redefine what progress means to you when you reject the diet mentality. So progress might mean finding a new exercise that you love, experimenting with the food, recognizing your own hunger and fullness cues. You get to decide what progress really means. So those are 3 steps that you can do, and they're not easy. I listed them off like, you can just take out the diet mentality or stop thinking about those things. Like I said, they take practice and it takes time. And I think that you have to revisit them over and over again. But it is incredibly valuable to take these baby steps. So I encourage you, if you have any questions about what I've talked about, to PM me or DM me, put answers in or questions in the comments. This is something that I coach about a lot. It's hard to actually condense it into, a 20-minute video and get that information out. It really is something that is best discussed. So it's great to be able to see where someone's at with their eating and their awareness with their eating, and then talk about ways to slowly implement an actual awareness of your internal cues. And that is what it means basically to become an intuitive eater. So I am excited to continue on this and to give you more insights and to move on to principle 2 next week. So have a great week.